My name is Patrick James Lynch, and I host this event series that we do called Powering Through, a conversational speaker series on obstacles and challenges and what it takes to overcome them. This is the 12th or 13th that we've done, and actually we figured out the third in the state of Missouri. Okay, Justin, you're up first. So this is Justin Senger. Justin, how old are you?
16.
16. And you have severe hemophilia A, is that correct?
Yes.
So tell us about Aniridia, because we're all pretty familiar with hemophilia to some degree, but Aniridia is a word that most of us aren't used to hearing. What is Aniridia?
Well, I was born with this eye disease. It's called Aniridia. The nerves didn't develop quite right, so it makes my eyes shake back and forth really quick.
Does that mean, I know you're legally blind, correct?
Yes.
And in terms of functionally speaking, tell us a little bit about your vision. Help us understand more of what you experience.
In school, I have to use an iPad, so everything that the teachers write on the smartboard, I see on the iPad. I have to use magnifying glasses. If they don't enlarge my print, I have to have enlarged print on my paper. I don't want no magnifying glass on my desk because people look at me weird.
And you mentioned the frustration that comes with feeling singled out or like you're treated differently. What do you do with that feeling? How do you channel that?
I like to walk. I'm a big walker, so I like just popping my music and walk. I feel free. I feel normal. I feel fine.
And how often do you go walking?
6, 7 times a day.
That's incredible. That's a lot of walking. When you first mentioned this to me, I have to be honest, I was thinking, wait a minute. When the blind guy's frustrated, he goes walking? That seems like a little bit dangerous. And your mom was even mentioning, like, you come home sometimes and it looks like you've been through a war.
Yeah.
So, it sounds like it's a little bit, I'm glad you do it, and exercise is great, but, like, isn't that a little dangerous?
Well, my mom was always so cautious of me walking because I would come home with scraped knees and scraped elbows. But one day I had to sit her down and I said, I'm growing up and you have to let me go. Unless if it's raining, I'm not going to win that fight.
Mom has the upper hand on that argument if it's raining.
Yes, sir.
And how, like, I really want to understand this because I'm still trying to get my head around it. I like to walk a lot, but I not to make you jealous, but I have fantastic vision. So I'm never worried about where I'm going. How do you, what's your tools? What do you do to kind of help yourself navigate as best you can on these walks and know all these paths? How do you learn them? Is this a dumb question to ask?
Kinda, but...
Good. Thank you for being honest. But does anyone else have this curiosity? Like, I just want to put it on the table. It seems challenging.
It is, like, with cars and stuff, but I just stay close to sidewalk. I make sure I look, because, like, I have really bad vision, but it's not, like, really bad to where I can't see cars coming. So, obviously, look for both sides of the roads if you're smart.
Right, just basic kind of safety protocol comes to mind. All right, fair enough. I guess I understand well enough, and good for you. You're also quite a golfer as well, right?
Yes, we just went to Florida. I golfed with my dad and my grandpa.
With your Aniridia as well, you have found a rhythm with this game. So what are ways outside of school that you could continue to develop as a golfer?
Well, sometimes me and my dad will go to maybe Joachim and just have fun there. They're par 3 courses.
Nice.
And I have little plastic golf balls that I hit in the front of my yard. So that helps me practice. It's not a real golf ball, so it's not going to go that far. So
right.
All right.
But it helps you with your technique. It helps you with your form, your
Swing.
muscle memory. Is there anything else stand out about you that we should be aware of?
There's disadvantages and there's advantages. One advantage is I don't have to deal with idiots on the road. So, and the other advantage is when I'm in the car in the passenger seat, I make your car look better.
Nice. That's a great point. That's a really great point. You're 16, you turned 17 in November. We were just talking about being an LIT at camp. You already went, right? You were an LIT of one more year of that. So it's interesting, right? Like 16 to 17 to 18, all these aspects of adulthood start kicking in. And there are things like driving that you have to handle that differently. What are some other considerations that are on your mind as you are growing up? What are some things that you're going to have to handle differently that many of us would take for granted?
I'll have to use my magnifying glasses for college. I can't. I'll have to find transportation. I can't rely on everyone all the time, so that's tough.
You're very articulate and very thoughtful, and you've obviously given a great deal of consideration to the challenges that you do face, and you're funny about it as well, which is, tells me that you're quite insightful. Who do you talk to about because you're, as far as we know, the only person that has hemophilia and Aniridia, is that correct?
Yes.
So that's unique. So who do you talk to kind of process with and debrief with, and where does this amount of reflection come from? I imagine you're not just thinking on your walks. I imagine you're talking to somebody. Who's in your support
I talk
group?
to my friend that I've known for years now. So.
There's one friend in particular who you
Yes.
connect with?
Yes.
And how does he help you, or she help you? How does this person help you?
He's just always there for support. So it's not like he's gonna leave for something stupid. He's always there to help. So.
Yeah, it's important to have those people in our lives, right? You have to be that funny, Kelle.
Okay.
That's your requirement now. So you do not have a bleeding disorder. Can you just give us kind of the 1-minute overview of your story?
Well, born and raised in Missouri, and I got married when I was 21 to a wonderful man that I went to high school with. And we were married about 7 years, and on May 23rd, 2014, so just a little over 2 years ago, he was actually killed instantly in a motorcycle accident. He was a teacher at a local high school, and it was his last day of school, and he was leaving school on his motorcycle and was hit and killed instantly by a truck. So that was a little over 2 years ago, and prior to all of that, I should back up a little bit. He served in the Marine Corps 4 years, did 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan. He survived deployments, he survived war. Great. We got through all this. He's around the rest of my life. It was a few years after he got out of the military that he was a teacher over at Eureka, and that's when the accident happened. And now, 2 years later, I'm wearing a ring because I have since remarried 2 months ago.
So some interesting challenges with all of that. So to back up, the experience of being with someone who is active duty military, who is sent out on deployments, what is that day-to-day like when you are the partner of someone in that position?
Sure, it's a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of loneliness, impatience. You'll go sometimes weeks at a time without even hearing from your loved one. They'll cut off communication, including email, and they won't tell you why. It's a very unpredictable lifestyle, and a lot of fear for sure.
So how long was it in total that you were apart on and off for these long periods of time?
He did a 4-year enlistment. Okay. And most of that was spent apart. There was about a 6-month period out of the 4 years where we lived together. Wow. Other than that, it was all back and forth, him visiting here, me visiting there.
When he returned, was he dealing with PTSD or any other sort of assimilating challenges? Was it a bit of a trial to get in the flow again?
He didn't struggle with that too much. There was a lot that over time a lot of information that he would not tell me. Sometimes it was a year or two later where he would tell me something like, well, I didn't know you were being mortared every single day you were over there. You never told me that.
And forgive me, what is mortared?
Basically small bombs where they were based out in Afghanistan.
So there was a period of time where that was his every day?
Every day.
So the accident happens, and I know I lost my younger brother suddenly, just a phone call, no warning. So I know a little bit about that experience. It's remarkably ironic to have gone through what you went through together, and then he goes to school, he gets a job, and you have a house, and then like that. What were those initial feelings? I mean, that's such a remarkable position to be in. What do you recall? Just feeling like, no, we we already got past this potential. This
Right.
was supposed to be behind us. How did you reconcile that?
Yeah, it was definitely frustrating, overwhelming. We finally got our life, we're in the same place and we're heading in the direction together that we want to finally. And then that was just all erased, in an instant. And, I was left not only without him, but, when you're married, you make plans for your future together, goals, hopes, dreams. You have all that together with this spouse. And then all of a sudden they're taken from you. Well, not only are they taken from you, but so are all your hopes and dreams and everything you plan together for your future. Children, all of that. None of that was very far away. And so I just felt like I was completely starting from scratch again. I felt like not only he was taken, but I felt like my whole life was erased at that moment in time. Obviously, I've come far from then, but yeah, in those initial months, that's a very, very hard thing to come to terms with for sure.
What was that first 6 months like? What were some of your coping mechanisms? How did you get through all of that?
Sure. Well, again, I was very fortunate. I had the most amazing support system. So, that was tremendously helpful. I think if you were in my situation and did not have that support system, obviously it would have been much more difficult.
But you did take an active role in developing your network with the way that you used social media
Right.
as a tool of processing and coping and reaching out. So share a little bit about how you used social media to help build your own network.
I chose very early on in the process to share my grief, my coping abilities almost from day one. I put it all out there on Facebook. If I woke up one day and I hated the world and I couldn't get out of bed, I put it on Facebook. Everyone knew it. I'm like, because in my past with the deployments and stuff, I was very guilty of bottling things up at that point in time, internalizing everything. And I knew after learning from that experience and now going from deployments to death, I couldn't handle it like that. So I made the decision very early on that I was going to share this with the world, whoever wanted to listen, and a lot of people did. They read my stuff every day, and I think in the end, that helped me cope tremendously and heal much, much faster than I otherwise would have.
And what I find, because you're obviously a generally composed, professional, normal, good human being, and when I see friends of mine online, it always makes me feel a little more human, because I feel better about my own pain and struggle or whatever I'm dealing with. It's helpful to be reminded of that. So when you share your story, you give yourself the opportunity to process and work through feelings, but you also open the door to other people, and you allow them the same permission to have
Absolutely.
feelings that can be scary, to have feelings that can be uncomfortable. And that's an important part of it as well. When was the turn for you? At what point did you start to feel like you've taken your first step toward what the next chapter in your life was going to be?
Sure, that was a very, very vivid moment for me. All the firsts when someone passes away, as you know, I'm sure, are very difficult. The holidays were particularly difficult. I really struggled tremendously leading up till Christmas, but something happened with me where I decided, I don't want this to control the rest of my life. I want to have a happy life. I want kids one day. I don't want to be alone the rest of my life. And I swear I woke up the next day. It was Christmas Eve. I woke up, and that was the turning point that day. The day before Christmas Eve was the worst day I had had since he passed away. And then I woke up Christmas Eve 2014, and I was ready to take charge. I'm like, I have to take control of this. These are the things I want. And other people can try to help me along the way, but ultimately it's up to me. It was a few months later, in April of 2015, that I started talking to some handsome guy. A year later, we were married just this April.
You and Brandon, he's in a unique position, which is also interesting. Talk a little bit about that unique situation.
When Brandon came into my life, I made a point to tell him, I said, you're never going to fill Will's shoes because you brought your own pair. And that was absolutely true. And really, at the point in my life when he started coming around and making a presence, I hadn't made the decision I want to date someone. You know, we both had pasts that were, you know, had some messiness and whatever, and it was kind of the perfect collision, really.
Yeah.
So.
And you had prepared yourself. You had done the work that you needed to do to be ready for,
Right.
you know, the falling into your life moment to happen.
Right, absolutely.
You came in last night from Alaska?
Yeah, I got in at 5 o'clock in the morning this morning, I guess. I left last night at 4 from Alaska. So I'm 30 years old. I have severe hemophilia B. I guess the big thing going on in my life is I'm trying to climb the 7 summits. So it's the highest mountain on each continent. To date, I've done 5 of the 7. So I just have the peak in Antarctica called Mount Vinson left and Mount Everest.
I just have. Notice
just
the
have.
I just have.
And after college, when baseball stopped, I really struggled with what to do. I'm a very physical person. I love being active. And when that went away, I kind of stopped my prophy treatments, and I struggled with bleeds, and I had to find something.
I, too, have always found when I am more physical, I am more diligent, like to the hour that I'm infusing, because it's built into some routine that involves I go hiking at this hour and I sleep at these hours, and it's so much harder, isn't it? It's a weird, ironic twist.
Yeah, and even more ironic is I have a really powerful needle phobia.
Do you still battle with that phobia of needles?
Oh, big time. Actually, at camp, I was at Alaska hemophilia camp, and I just didn't want to do it, you know. And I actually had one of the nurses infuse me there because I just didn't want to stick myself. And I almost passed out, which is really embarrassing.
Wow. Growing up, did you have a port, or did you always use peripheral sticks despite the needle phobia?
I did not have a port. I didn't even start prophy treatment till I was probably about 8. I only infused when I had bleed, so kind of just that was kind of ingrained in my mind that, like, oh, you have all this pain and you have to get stuck with a needle.
That's interesting. That's interesting to think about from the perspective of like a potential parent, or just like in terms of caregiving. If it's an association of, oh, I stick needle, I play baseball, like that's positive. If it's needle means hospital and bleeding, that's negative. It's going to be maybe more challenging to develop and learn how to self-infuse at a younger age if your association is a negative one. It's one thing if you're like, okay, I don't have baseball anymore, I'm going to hike and go camping. It's another thing when you're like, I'm going to climb all the mountains. So what brought you to wanting to climb the 7 summits? What particularly about that quest appealed to you?
You know, I just started hiking with my uncle Dave. He never questioned the hemophilia part. You know, he always was like, oh, you want to go rock climbing? Let's go. But he had climbed Mount McKinley, or how I usually call it, Denali in Alaska, which is one of the 7 summits in a really crazy mountain. The temperature fluctuates huge. It can get down to like 35 below, 40 below. Wind, lots of snow, and you're also on a glacier the whole time, so you have to worry about falling into crevasses and stuff. He told me stories about climbing that mountain and some of the experiences he had, and it just seemed like a really interesting challenge to see if I could do it. I got the opportunity to go to Kenya, and Mount Kilimanjaro is only like 200 miles away in Tanzania, so I thought that'd be a good place to start, and I just felt like it was time to actually just go for it and see how it went. You know, and Kilimanjaro is a pretty relatively tame mountain. You know, it's 6 days on the mountain and pretty gradual incline. And I was nervous, you know, like I've never gone to 19,000 feet before on a mountain, or been on a mountain 6 days and tried to manage my hemophilia. But it was a great experience, and I got to the summit and I just knew that this was what I really wanted to do. So kind of went from there.
And in terms of the management of the hemophilia aspect of this, what are some of the, I mean, it kind of opens up a whole lot of questions. How do you prepare? Like, what are the conversations with the hematologist or the HTC like? What's the adjustment to your care plan? What do you do? Like, what are the things that you encountered on the mountain that were unanticipated or anticipated bleeds? Or how did, like, I don't know, take any of those questions, I guess.
I guess the main one was just trying to figure out my treatment plan and if we were going to modify it at all for climbing, which we did. We didn't actually modify it because I generally train for all these mountains for, 6 to 8 months beforehand. And I keep that same prophy regimen all the way through the mountain, which has worked pretty well. I guess there were some questions about whether infusing at like 17,000 feet was going to be challenging or in cold temperatures. But it actually hasn't been an issue. You drink a ton of water on these climbs to help your body acclimate. So my veins usually are popping up big time, and I lay in my sleeping bag for a couple of minutes and mix my factor while I'm laying in it. I just would pop up out of my sleeping bag and infuse real quick and get right back in my sleeping bag. And it wasn't a big deal. On Denali, the challenge was I didn't know if things would start freezing, and I put my factor in my sleeping bag at night, and while I was climbing, I'd actually put it in wool socks, and I'd stuff it like in my backpack as close to my body as possible, and had no issues with it. So I just had to be thinking about that kind of the whole time.
There are the challenges we know we're going to face. We know medical conditions that are chronic are always going to be a part of our lives, and then there are the challenges that are dropped onto your plate, and you just have to keep moving forward. But thinking ahead, I'm curious to know from each of you, and we'll start with you, Justin, what are some either short or long-term goals that you have that you are either thinking about how a physical challenge or a disorder challenge will impact those goals and how you're going to have to account for those, or just other challenges you can foresee? So a lot of times planning for emergencies are what help us mitigate how problematic they can be. And on the flip side, planning for potential challenges help us achieve goals. So I think it's worthwhile to note potential challenges when thinking about goals for yourself. So Justin, what's a goal that you have for yourself and some of the challenges that you are preparing to take on to achieve that goal?
Well, I want to go to college, so college is going to be kind of tough considering I might have to rely on more people than others. It's going to be tough because I don't want to have to rely on people, but those people are there to help you, not leave you.
Well said. And I think another thing that keeps coming up is support and knowing who your support system is. It's funny, like we don't want to admit when we need help. That's a human thing. There are other people in the world who can help you, who can be there for you, and who want to be there for you. So I think it's important, like you said, we have to remember that people are there to be there for you. It's not you're being burdensome on them or relying on them. That's just the nature of civilization, right? Kelle, what about for you? What's a goal of yours that you're anticipating some challenges?
I struggled for a while when I immediately started dating Brandon, and when things got more serious and you get to that point in the relationship where you start talking about the future together. And I was very hesitant to do so for a long time because I was afraid of talking about the future, making plans. What if that's wiped away? Because that is what happened to me. So I had this fear of, I was just kind of, well, let's just day by day, let's not make any plans, So it took me a little bit of time and a lot of patience from him and support from him to get me out of that mindset. Be like, we can't live every day with the fear that, tragedy or something is going to impede on your life and your plans. You can't do that. You have to plan for what you want and hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I can side with that, having not just lost my brother suddenly, but I feel like a lot of the big things that have happened in my life, the unfortunate big things, have all just been quick. Conditioning starts to occur where
Sure.
It happened before, so it feels like it could happen again, but that's a very uncomfortable way to live in the long run.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's good that you've been able to get together. So I could use a little more work in that direction, if I'm being honest. And Chris, what about I guess there's some pretty obvious ones coming up, but let's put the mountains aside for a second. And what are other things in your life did I just blow your answer? You were like, I've been prepping a great mountain climbing answer for this question.
That's all I was thinking about, yeah. No, I think there's one of the things that a challenge that is coming up is my wife and I are talking about children.
Those are challenging.
Yeah, they're super challenging. I was just at camp for a whole week, so yeah, children are challenging. No, but we've been talking about, with Everest coming up, like when is it responsible time to actually have children, and is it responsible to, get that process going beforehand, which, that's a very serious discussion. And then we're also talking about adopting from a developing country, hopefully somebody with hemophilia. So we've been trying to go down that path and kind of explore those options. So that's a really big challenge in my life, that just getting mentally prepared for being responsible for another human. That's kind of a big deal. So, and exciting, pretty exciting and terrifying. But
We should talk more about us 30-year-olds are in similar positions, I think, when it comes to those conversations with our significant others. I'd like to once again thank our wonderful panel here for their participation.
To watch video from any of our previous Powering Through sessions, visit poweringthrough.org, or to learn more about National Cornerstone Healthcare Services, NCHS, visit nchswecare.com.